right, time to start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Helsinki and from Argentina. And welcome to the Pulse of Networks webinar series. This is actually episode 19 already. I'm Claus still, and I'm the CEO of Creanord, and I'm very happy to have my friends from Iquall Networks, Pérez Trozzi, and Moira participating in this webinar. Today's topic is a very interesting one. We are touching on autonomous networks and how to achieve autonomous network operations by integrating real-time network monitoring with intelligent orchestrations. But before we start, I want to advertise that all of our previous webinar series episodes are also available on our website. So if you are interested to look at any of the other topics we have touched on, check under News and Insights on-demand webinar, and you can find any of the previous episodes. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so our key objectives today is to look at how do you actually move beyond manual operations of the network. For today's connectivity demands, manual network operations really too slow, and as we know, everybody is looking for how to automate this and move from a reactive monitoring phase into actually instant and even autonomous action. And in this today we are going to look at actually two parts. So we are going to look at how you can in real time detect the issues by the Creanord Pulse Core solution being the kind of eyes of the network. And then Iquall Networks having the MAT suite doing the actual orchestration, reacting on the data when we feed the data into Iquall and then do reactive actions to reroute traffic or otherwise mitigate the failures. And that's really, we're going to talk a little bit also about the business impacts. So it's of course to drastically reduce the mean time to repair time and operational costs, and also to improve service stability and customer experience. And that's really the beef of it is then Moira doing a live demonstration of our integration between the systems, showing actually how this can be achieved. All right, but just a brief introduction first of Iquall Networks. Really good presence across all of the major tier 1 communication service providers in Latin America, and Iquall has been, as Creanord has, been in the business for a very long time, since 2008, so very well known in the industry. And Iquall specializes on the network automation and orchestration, so they have been a forerunner in this area. And the fact is that it's providing also a vendor-neutral cross-domain foundation and to achieve this full automation. I think this runs very well with also the Creanord message of being really multi-vendor as a solution. And Iquall has been very well known to operators because they have been very successful in these Telemanagement Forum Catalyst Awards, both in 2024 and in 25, which really shows that they are a forerunner in this area with innovation and execution in this AI-driven network automation. A little bit about Creanord for those of you who has not been participating before in our webinars. So we have also been a long time in the business, actually turned 25 in December last year. We are really about having visibility into the network, being the eyes into the network. Data networks are quite challenging to manage, and you don't see all of these microbursting and small issues that happen all across the network, and we provide that visibility to you. And we have always looked at how we can more and more automate this, help with the troubleshooting, automate the troubleshooting, and so forth. And it was really exciting when we met Iquall Networks and last year demonstrated the solution for the first time in Mobile World Congress, as Iquall then takes us to the next level in terms of automation and bringing the whole closed loop together. And we have been deployed all across the world in 30 countries and more than 60 networks. A little bit more, or again, for those of you who are not familiar with the Creanord solution. So when it comes to really managing a large network with a lot of devices, mobile networks can have tens of thousands of base stations, not to mention all of the devices that are between in the network, routers and so forth. You do need a solution that's scalable to these scales of networks. This is not where the open source solutions have been designed for. And the enabler here is the TLAMP protocol, two-way active measurement protocol defined in IETF. And nowadays, very well supported by all of the major network element vendors. That means you can deploy a probe at the central site and then monitor towards all of the different devices in the network, whether it's Nokia, Juniper, Ericsson, Huawei, Cisco, and so forth. And all of these devices can respond to those TLAMP messages, send it back, and then the probe can collect and measure the quality of the network. And this can be used in all types of networks, so mobile networks, fixed networks, satellite networks is the latest frontier for us, as well as very much in also critical communication networks, different like public safety, energy, and so forth. All right, so it's you, Herman.
Thank you, Claus, and thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be part of this area. Just a little of theory. I don't want to bore you, but to set up the condition of what the industry is discussing. This North Star of autonomous network, for us, NL4 is not just about technology. It's required architecture, it's required governance, and it's required organization maturity. I like to think in CSP as trains. You know, they are constantly moving, they carry the economy, they transport people and goods, and everything runs on the top of them. You cannot simply stop a train to redesign it. You cannot pause the network to modernize operation. CSP are critical infrastructure of the modern society. They operate under constant load. They must be reliable, predictable, trusted. All this modernization cannot mean disruption. It must happen in motion. This is a real constraint from the operator side, you know. There is fragmented data, legacy OSS rigidity, siloed domain ownership, policy maturity, operational risk exposure, a legacy governance mindset, and a constant pressure to prove business impact, you know, to the CEO, to the CTO, to the CFO. That's the reality. On the other hand, the ambition is very clear. NL4 means intent-driven operation, autonomous cross-domain closed loop, policy governance, SLA-aware remediation. human supervision instead of manual execution. But this ambition only became real if the capabilities are deliberately constructed. A unified intent model, real-time active performance validation, AML capability for decision making. And I want to do a double check there, because today machine learning is most important than GenAI to real networks. I'm talking about this year and next year. Cross-domain orchestration, closed-loop policy governance, execution traceability, automate full-stack operational integrity testing. We need a lot of capabilities. And this required to break in a false dichotomy. It's not about build versus buy. It's about assembling and governing the right capabilities across vendors, across domain, and across system. One more, please, Claus.
Thanks, Herman. And so the use case we are going to discussing today is about optimizing internet user experience and operational expenditure, and we have described it here on this slide, where we have basically a use case where we want to monitor paths towards the internet to critical locations in the internet. How we select them then will depend a little bit on what we want to optimize. It could be, for instance, that we want to optimize the user experience for the top 50 websites that our customers are visiting. If it's more of a consumer maybe oriented application, it could also be the, so to speak, user experience towards different public cloud providers. That's more of a maybe a business use case, or whatever else targets on the internet. And then the point being that when I'm communicating from my own network towards the internet, I'm going to go through some peering point in the network. And this is a big challenge for the operators to select these peering points, because depending on who you are peering with, there's going to be different cost points. Some peering points may be cheaper, but maybe when I'm routing traffic toward that peering point, there's going to be much more delays. Maybe there are packet losses across the paths if it's kind of a not a first-class network and so forth. Other peering points may be more costly and providing better quality of service. So my problem is that I want to just make sure that I have the best possible user experience, which could be just to at all times monitor all possible paths through the different peering points, and then just select the best available. Or the use case could, for instance, also be that I just want to make sure that my user experience, my quality of service is at the specific level, and then I just want to select the cheapest option that provides that level of user experience. And I'm sure there can be many different other ways to optimize, and that's also the beauty, I think, of the math platform, that you can modify these as needed.
Yes, as like a side note, I'm running in the background of my laptop a ping test, because I'm seeing all the time if the latency change and affect the video and the audio. But this is a homemade solution. Okay, we are going now here. We're going to see something real carrier class solution. And well, in this slide, what you're seeing is not a single vendor stack. As mentioned Claus before, they are the eyes of the solution, okay? And this is a layer architecture where each vendor is deeply specialized in its own domains, okay? And this is important because the software solution of Creanord is great. It's a carrier class and a real telco solution. But on the top of that, there is the expertise, the human behind the solution. They are real expert in this technology. They breathe this kind of problem, And this is important when you need to design software, because this is not about to take a standard software or maybe a software for enterprise and then adapt for telco. You need to, from the scratch, design this kind of solution for telco tier 1 and tier 2. So we create together this blueprint for on the sales layer. Creanord provide Trump-based active performance monitoring, so we can have the latency, jitter, packet loss, end-to-end app visibility. And again, this is an SLA-grade deterministic validation. All the events are exposed through a normal API and become automation-ready signals. On the side, in the other hand, and in the right, we are the hands of the solution. Math acts like the acting layer, consume that validating signal, and then evaluate the network status. If the network is in freeze, if the network is in maintenance window, and applies closed loop policies aligned with the UDA, use AM and ML capabilities for decision making, prioritize action based on SLA and business impacts. Costs are important here also. And then orchestrate the cross-domain remediation workflows in a governance traceable way. Every action is auditable, every change is versioned, every loop is validated. This is not alarm automation, okay? This is not when you have some script and you send a post and then the script do something in your network. This is the deterministic governance closed loop orchestration. Each vendor in the solution remain and the expertise in their own layer. But together, in this case, we are creating a solution that operates as unified end-to-end autonomous capability. One more, please, Claus.
All right. And in this blueprint, so again, maybe a little bit reiterating. Creanord is the eyes of the network. So basically, what we do here is that we will use this TLAM protocol or ICMP ping, depending on whether the targets that we are monitoring are capable of responding to TLAM or ICMP ping. And then just monitoring through all the potential internet gateways toward each of the destination that we are monitoring. And of course, when you talk about monitoring, and when we talk about active monitoring, so it's a fairly frequent set of monitoring. You can configure yourself how frequently you want to monitor. Typically nowadays, what we see operators doing in mobile networks, they monitor typically send a packet every 100 milliseconds, so 10 packets per second. Towards the internet, it could be similar frequency, maybe once per second, or 10 packets per second towards each of these destinations. So it's a lot of data and measurements being done, and that's the way to really quickly catch what the quality actually is. You can also detect these smaller degradation, microbursts, etc., in the networks, and this data is then forwarded through the math suites for both for all of these destinations and for the primary paths and any potential other paths that you could have. So we have for all of the different peering points the data being forwarded. And you could also modify the use case to look at different time scales, because the Creanord system will calculate, of course, the real-time data. But if you don't want to react instantly, but you want to rather maybe look at the 5-minute level or at an hour level, what the quality is, and kind of do the decisions once an hour or so forth, you don't want it to react instantaneously. You can also do that. We have multiple different levels of analytics data that could be used for the decision making, as well as also looking at thresholds. So you could also have a kind of an availability metric to say that if it's meeting my targets less than 95% of the time, do some actions and so forth. There are many different ways you can build this.
Right. I think this is the last slide before the best part, the demo with Moira. The next part of this story is that once the deterministic observability is in place, the next step is governed execution. This is where our solution, Mat Suite, operates. Mat is vendor agnostic, domain agnostic, and NL4 ready. It does not replace OSS VSS. It abstracts complexity across domains and vendor. Mat is a modular Kubernetes-based microservices architecture. So each capability or feature, intent management, closed loop policy, workflow orchestration, AML, engine, network inventory, network status, and so on, are integrated with a strong telco CI/CD. This is not a standalone software. This is not something you can achieve without a very strong architecture. This allows horizontal scalability, independent lifecycle management, progressive capability adoption, and maybe the most important, production-grade resilience. Operators do not need to deploy everything at once. They need to iterate. They need to create some tests, but not workarounds, just like a small step to achieve the goal. So Mat turns the observability into governance closed-loop action across multiple network domains. It enabled very quickly AI-driven automation without reworking existing system. We are expert not only in the ideal blueprint. Okay, this is a solution for real telco. We know there is always a brownfield, and when I'm saying brownfield, I'm not saying that's only about technology. I'm also talking about the process. So with this solution, the operators have different strategies. Even in the same company, into a different area, operations, engineering, IT. Some of them want to build their own use case internally. Some prefer turnkey automation delivered end-to-end, but most of them, they adopt an hybrid approach. So there is no a single way to do the things, okay? And all the working models, all the ways to do things are okay because this platform is ready for support of the models. Most importantly, this allows hybrid governance model where there's a central policy control that coexists with distributed automation teams. This allows automation at scale. We are not talking about 1, 2, 3 use cases. We are talking about 100, 200, 300. We are talking about 100 engineers working at the same time. And this allows to avoid rip and replace strategy. There is no operational shock. There is no architectural reset, just a progressive capability evolution. Well, I think it's the Moira moment, right?
Yes.
I think it is. I think it's my turn. Thank you, Germán and Claus. Thank you for having us here. It is great to be sharing these discussions. So before I share my screen, I wanted just to make a disclaimer for all of you who are seeing this live. You have a Q&A button within the lower navbar of the Zoom meeting. So you can ask questions there. They can be either with your name or they can be anonymous. So feel free to ask any questions if you have them, and we will answer them within the last part of this session, which will be the panel discussion. So feel free to just ask whatever you want there. Great. So now I'm going to share my screen. Let me just... Okay. So you're saying a little map, right?
Yeah.
So great. So far we've seen the problem, the operational challenges. We've seen the joint solution with Creanord, with its Pulse core solution, and with Iquall with its Mat solution. And we've seen the architecture based on observability layer with the T1 proofs from Creanord, and the action layer, the orchestration layer with Mat solution from Iquall. And what I'm going to show you right now, it's an actual demo that is combining both of these solutions. We are integrating Mat with the Pulse core solution from Creanord to create this smart routing use case. So what we're seeing here is a map, actually, where we can see at the center of the map the Creanord proof located in Finland. This proof is measuring with this T1 protocol to certain target destinations. So what we're seeing, the little triangles are the target destinations, the internet target destinations. And we can see that they are painted in different colors. So green indicates that the destination is operating in a normal status, while orange or red indicates there is a problem. And the combination between what we're going to see, the combination between the proof and the target destination is what we call a circuit. So what we are going to be doing is, well, actually the pulse curve solution from Creanord is going to be doing is measuring certain network metrics. So we have jitter, we have packet loss, we have delay towards those circuits. And those circuits are going to be associated with links. So through those links, we are going to have traffic from prefixes from networks that we call protected networks that have services, so B2B services, B2C internal services that could be VIP, that have VIP treatment or not. And we are going to be monitoring those circuits, detecting anomalies in these KPIs I was mentioning, packet loss, jitter, and delay. And when anomalies are detected, we are going to be acting with MAT solution to perform a closed loop automation and to remediate that situation and swap the traffic from those networks to other provider. So what we're seeing here is the time series graph where we have the different circuits and the measurements. And I'm going to pause here a second, where we can see the blue dots are the actual raw measurements we are getting from the pulse curve solution. So the T1 proofs are measuring those KPIs, and with MAT we're integrating to get those measurements. And what we're also seeing is a machine learning analysis that we can perform with the MAT solution of those raw measurements. So what we have is a dotted black line, where the dotted black line is the forecasted measurements. So we have the raw measurements, implement machine learning techniques, machine learning algorithm, and we have a prediction for those KPIs. So the black line, the dotted black line, is that predicted value for, in this case, for example, the round trip time, what we're seeing. And then we have in baby blue, an area which delimits the upper and lower limits for that prediction. So anything above that upper limit or below that lower limit, it will be marked as a red dot because it is considered an anomalous point. So an anomaly in that KPI. So the intelligence of this, as I mentioned, we are going to be swapping traffic from certain networks to another, from one provider to another provider. And the intelligence that the closed loop automation feature brings to this is not to react whenever an isolated anomaly is detected, but to act when, for example, for a certain period of time, we have a lot of anomalies found within the data, and we have a real problem going with that circuit, with that peering destination. So what we're going to do is act when this happens. We're going to act when, for example, anomalies are over certain threshold or below certain threshold. And by acting, I mean executing a network automation to remediate that situation and perform this swapping. So that's the intelligence that the closed loop automation brings also to this case. So not only detecting the anomalies, but also acting when it's right to act and to perform this swapping. And here what we're seeing, as I mentioned, is the circuits are associated with links, and those links are associated with the providers. So here we're seeing the edge peering map with the providers, and again, painted in different colors to showcase their status. So green for normal status and orange, in this case, the provider is also orange, to highlight if they have any issues detected. And again, this swapping will be performed in an intelligent way. So if orange is affected and, for example, Telia carrier is also affected, we are not going to swap those networks, those protected networks to Telia. We're going to perform an analysis with this orchestration, with this automated process we're going to see right now. So that's the idea of this smart routing use case. What we're going to see is actually the action, the orchestrated action. So again, Creanord, as Claus said, provides the eyes of the solution, the observability part, and Iquall with the MAT solution provide the orchestration and the action layer. So what we have here is a network automation that it is an orchestration workflow within our platform. This is an orchestrated high-level action. So we have high-level automations that execute lower-level tasks. And as Claus said at the beginning, this solution within MAT, this type of automation within MAT, we built here with certain logic, but this is fully customizable to adapt to your business needs, to your use case needs, to your operational needs. So this is just one solution, one business logic applied to this case to perform this swapping. And what we're going to see is that this orchestrated process is combined of different stages, following the TM Forum 3-layer model. So we're going to have the business intent, the service intent, and the resource intent. And in the first part, the business intent, as Germán said, the idea of this solution is also to consider the business impact. The idea is to consider the costs of moving that traffic from those protected networks from one provider to another. Because we could have, for example, those protected networks going through a link of a premium provider, for example, and we want to move them to another one, but we also want to consider that that traffic that we're moving to another provider could be out of the committed throughput, could affect the quota we have with that provider. So the idea is to consider the best provider, the best link to swap these networks in terms of business optimization, in terms of cost efficiency. So that is what we're going to be doing in that first step, in that business intent analysis. Then we're going to move on to the second step of this workflow, which is the service intent. So in the service intent, think of this. So in this workflow, the logic that we're taking is that when this is triggered for the anomalies detected, we are going to perform a full evacuation of the prefixes just to save and to keep the SLAs and the quality of policies of those protected networks. But think that this use case could also be applying not only to these anomalies being detected, but also due to the monitor of the traffic of those protected networks. So what's the idea? The idea is we can have the measurements of the traffic that is being, the throughput that is being trafficked with those protected networks through a certain link. And we can, again, use machine learning to analyze the traffic, perform a predictive model, for example, from now to a month later. And we can see that, for example, if the traffic keeps growing, that growth will make our costs increase in a way that will affect our business value. So the idea here is to analyze whether maybe we have certain services that we could move from a premium provider to a cheaper provider while still maintaining the SLA and the quality of service policies, and keep, for example, the B2B more VIP services in the premium provider, but also save money for moving those services towards a cheaper one. So that's the idea of the service intent. Also analyze those kinds of things when performing the swapping. And then we're going to have the third layer, which is the resource intent. And for the resource intent, what we're going to do is generating the configurations that will be actually impacted on the edge network, on the edge devices. So MAT can go towards network and impact that configuration, as Germán said, in a governed way with traceability, following a CI/CD and the DevOps methodology. So then the workflow in this case follows with a feasibility check. And here I want to stop the workflow because here we have some interesting aspect to remark in this use case, and what we wanted to bring also to this discussion is the incorporation. What you're seeing there, that step, it's the incorporation of GenAI to the workflows. So in this case, we're using a Gemini step. This Gemini step is invoking actually the Gemini AI model to perform, in this case, a risk analysis, a risk classification of actually performing the swapping on the network. So what's the idea here, and what we wanted to bring to the discussion is not only to use GenAI as part of our workflows, our automations to perform or to get an executive summary that we can send by email or we can update a ticket with, but also to use GenAI to incorporate these new tools within our workflows to, for example, decide if the workflow should follow one path or another. So that's the idea here, incorporating Gemini as a risk analysis in the middle of the workflow in this feasibility check part. And finally, This workflow continues with the update of the inventory, the update of the OSS, and as I mentioned, the executive summary, again performed by Gemini in this case, so that we can send an email, we can escalate it, we can update a ticket with that information. What we're going to see now, so we have the workflow, and what we're going to see now are the reports generated. So we have the business intent where we have detail for each one of the providers, why it was rejected or why it is the best provider in terms of costs. That was what I was explaining in the business intent. Then we have the service intent report, which in this case is a full prefix evacuation because anomalies were detected, but here we could have the different services moved with our decision. For the resource intent, we have the configuration details that are going to be impacted in the edge devices. So here we are setting the local preference, the BGP local preference for those prefixes. This is the actual configuration. And then we're going to have the GenAI generated response. So we have the risk classification and an impact explanation within the first step, and then the executive summary within the last step of the workflow. So that's the idea of this use case, to detect, to get these measurements, these network metrics from the T1 proofs, analyze them with machine learning, and then performing and executing an action to remediate the situation, incorporating also GenAI within the workflow, and incorporated real analysis of the business, real analysis of the services that we have, and real analysis then on the actual network that we're going to be impacted, that configuration.
Something to add, Moira. I think this is a clear demonstration of the hybrid approach. We are combining machine learning, LLM models on-prem, LLM models, software as a service like Gemini. We are combining policy decision-making. We don't need to wait to create a super agent that decides everything. It's the combination of workflows, machine learning, LLMs on-prem, LLMs like a software as a service, machine learning. Again, there is a lot of use cases that you not depend to the creation or development of agents. And I'm not saying, as you mentioned, that GenAI is not important because we are using it. But at the heart of the solution is how you combine all the technologies and you define very clear the expertise of your different vendors and the different solution. What we're showing here is that we are not expert in SWAMP, in the measurement. That's Creanord part, and they're great doing that. And on the other side, they are not expert on what we do. So what we try to bring to the operator is an end-to-end solution with the best of all the technologies and the best of all the expertise.
Yes, thank you, Germán, for that. And I think that I can also add to that most operators, when they are starting this journey towards the autonomous networks and all that, they don't have maybe the deterministic process, or they don't have enough confidence with these tools. So you can also be adding to this workflow, particularly, you could be adding manual interventions, so to have these human-in-the-loop actions. So MAT itself incorporates a module within the orchestration workflows where you can have these user tasks with Iquall, but it is the human-in-the-loop action, where an engineer can be checking, for example, okay, this is the mob configuration that I'm going to be impacted. I want to check it. I want to approve it. I want to escalate it to another engineer. So you can also incorporate the human-in-the-loop action within these workflows and slowly start building value with this type of solution. So that is something I wanted to add, and I think that was a great comment, Germán. Thank you.
Great.
So,
Claus.
Sorry?
Great, and I guess you have still some in your demo. So sorry, let's continue.
Yes. I'm just wrapping. So the idea and what I wanted to show you here are some KPIs you could obtain with these, some insightful KPIs to build dashboards so you can have estimated savings. Remember, I was just saying you could use this to optimize your business part, your cost, to make it more efficient, to detect this traffic that's going on through these circuits, and to perform the swapping based on a cost-efficient decision, not only an anomaly detection decision. You can have the swaps per provider so that you can see which provider is working best. You can have different metrics, the current status of the circuits, that will help you analyze and see the value of this smart routing use case. And the last part of this demo is, as Germán said, AI agents are not fully necessary for this development, but it is the topic that everyone is talking right now. So we also wanted to bring it to this panel discussion. And what we're seeing here is that we have a smart routing agent, that it is powered by Google Gemini. This model is using Gemini 3 as an AI model. And this agent is connected to Matt's MCP server. So Matt has a native MCP server where one can expose these network automations as tools for this agent to be monitoring the status of the circuits, the status of the provider, the billing models, and everything you have exposed, the agent can consume. So here in this demo, I'm going to activate, let's say, the agent by sending a message. So this is a conversational demo. I'm asking the status of the circuit, for example, but think of this as an agent that could be scheduled, that could be actively going and executing these tools with the Matt MCP server to get this information on the circuits, to get the information on the providers, and to perform the swapping if necessary. Again, all the governance on going to the network, impacting configuration, knowing the status of the network is on Matt's side, on the orchestration side, but the agent could use these tools to, again, monitor the status of these circuits and activate these swapping. So that's the idea of these AI agents. Of course, they are not necessary, and we think that they are kind of a last step or added thing to this use case. This use case showcase real value with real solutions from PulseCore solution from Creanord, Matt solution from Iquall, acting together to perform this use case to give value to your network operations with this closed-loop automation policies and features. So that's it for...
Something for us here, sorry, is this is our capabilities. This is the foundation for future use cases. So don't keep in the thought that this is only about a conversational agent. What is showing Moira is one of the many possibilities. We are exposing all the automation, the building blocks. In Iquall, we call it bricks. And from that, you can do whatever you want in the agent. So this is just a real good example for Moira, but it's an example. What we're showing here is capabilities. At the end of the day, you can define a different process, a different use case using the same architecture. Sorry, Moira.
No, it's okay. So I was going to say that's it for the demo part, and I hope you understand what we try to bring here to this panel, this joint solution. And yeah, that's it. Claus, the presentation is all yours now.
Thanks, Moira.
Back to you.
Yeah, that was a fantastic presentation and demo, I must say. And isn't it so that you will also be doing this at the Mobile World Congress?
Yes, of course, we will be showcasing this at the Mobile World Congress. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody joining there at Mobile World Congress, visit the Iquall booth and check out the demo and come to the Creanord stand also at the Finland.
The Creanord booth also. We are going to be we are going to be in your booth also. So
yeah,
I think the first option needs to be the Creanord booth, and then they can by and take a coffee with us. But
yes,
let's go first to your booth. You're our host. you organize all these kind of webinars and all these projects.
Yeah, thank you. And so let's jump back and just summarize here key takeaways. So I think it was very clear from the demo that okay, you of course first you need to be aware of what's happening in your network and what Creanord can provide, and then the real combination of Creanord and Iquall, and when you are really starting to do actions on the network, you are really getting onto the next level and to have discovered automation and multi-domain orchestration. maybe adding to that, okay, now we are just looking at Iquall and Creanord, but the great thing, of course, with the Mat suite is that you then have all the other integrations. So think about when you are integrating a lot of other vendors into these workflows, you can really do fantastic things, I think. And but okay, when we are talking about this closed loop automation, and that's what we really try to stress out always, when you make the actions, what data you make the actions on really matters. You do need to have very accurate data from the network, from any of the systems and part that you are involving in that workflow, and that's where the Creanord part can really help. We are known for having very accurate, very precise, very scalable data from the data transport layer. And what's nice here, I think, with the Mat suite is that when we are talking about automating network operations, it's not about revamping the whole OSS stack or procedures, processes, but as I understand the Mat suite, it really allows you to gradually move towards the fully automated. If you are not quite comfortable with fully automated, you can have the man in the middle to make decisions, and when you feel comfortable, then move over a specific use case to a fully automated mode, and then you can attack the next use case and next until you have automated everything eventually. And of course, both Creanord and Iquall, what is important here is the multi-vendor approach. In terms of observability, we are not limited to a specific part of the network. We can look at the whole data transport network, whether you have any of the major vendors there, Cisco, Nokia, Ericsson, Juniper, and so forth. And then on the other hand, in terms of Mat, it doesn't matter what sort of systems are being used. Mat is really acting as the glue there, so taking into account all of the systems, and you can just build this, to combine these bricks to a functioning workflow. And then of course, also what is very important and which when you are looking at not just talking about automating network operations, but actually taking into the production use, as Iquall has with many customers using this actively in the networks today. So you also not just need the automation, but you also need to really have the governance there and to be able to have the traceability. You need to have the control and a remediation in case something goes wrong. So all of these aspects are taken into account as well when you build these automated workflows. And not surprisingly, I think this is a topic where you can very quickly also actually, in terms of metrics, show the improvements both in terms of operational efficiency and then of course in the end what you're looking for is business benefits. But you're going to see obviously reduced mean time to repairs. You're going to see better SLA compliance. You're going to see better use of network resources, and in the end, of course, the enhanced customer experience being delivered, which then again will show on your churn rates and into actual your customers will eventually, of course, pay the bills. So you want to keep the best possible experience for them. Anything else to add on this one, Herman or Moira?
No, you were perfect.
Okay, good. All right, so I think time for us to move to the panel discussion. And let me have a look here. Actually, I can see we have quite a lot of questions. Great.
Yeah.
So first one here, is what does the learning curve look like for a traditional NOC teams to start building automation workflows in math? Is that for Moira or Herman?
Yes. Well, I will start. That's a good question. Traditional network operation teams get used to the CLI and ticket-based workflows. They're operating with the mindset. I used to be a NOC operator, so I know the mindset. We are the firefighters, For that reason and many others, math is designed to bridge that gap. You don't need to be a software developer, okay? You need to think in automation, in AI. You need to go moving gradually to think the use case and then to develop. But again, you don't need to develop software from scratch. You need to change some things in Python. You need to use some low-code tools. It's a combination. At the end of the day, you need at least 3 months to start using the platform. But again, this is not like a reskilling to change the essence of what you do. At the end of the day, you will be a network engineer, and the most important part is to know the problem, and then the platform itself guides you to create the different bricks. And one thing very important, once you design and develop a brick, it doesn't matter if from the Iquall team or from the operator, you can reuse it several times. So, for example, if you create an integration with the Creanord solution, you design it once, you develop and you go to production, and then you can use it several times for another use cases. So when you have math in the side of the service provider, typically we train 2, 3, 4, 10 engineers, and they are the first seed, the first team. But after that first team, they came a lot of different profiles, and most of them they even know how to write Python, they don't know the word, and it's right, because we don't want to change the business of the service provider. Service providers are service providers; they are not a software company. So we designed the solution with that mindset to bring tools to the network engineer, not to change the profession.
Great. And how have you seen for these engineers that they are accustomed to CLIs, etc.? So is it difficult for them to take it into use? What is your experience?
The service providers are most of them are a huge company, so it depends of the lot. You need to find the people with the energy and aligned to what the company needs. Okay,
Yes.
and you have a lot of examples. You have a lot of pre-built integration. You don't need to start from the scratch. So the answer is depend. If I have a network operations center of 20 engineer, of 30 engineer, at least 5 or 6, they start in the first part of the deployment and they love the solution. And when they find this is the tool for engineers and they can create new things and they can use the creativity to avoid repetitive tasks, and instead of that, create new solution of something more important, more end-to-end, they're starting to love the platform itself. So you need to work, you need to study, you need to sit down and do your homework, because this is the zero code, the low code without any effort doesn't exist. That's for marketing, and I'm the marketing guy. But you have all the help from the platform for our professional services to do that path very quick in a couple of months, and most important, to bring results to the managers, to the director, to the VP, to the CTOs. You don't need to wait a year or even 6 months to show anything working. Okay, so this is very quick to deploy and to achieve some results. As mentioned Moira before, we have several models. So perhaps you want to deploy something very small in the first month, and then iterate the idea, bringing new capabilities or new bricks to have a more complex end-to-end solution. We want to avoid the old waterfall project for 12, 18 months when you don't bring nothing to the company. We want to do something very agile very quickly. So the platform is designed with that mindset.
Right. And is it so that these bricks, so once you have it, it's a very nice visual workflow that you showed there in the demo. So once I have these bricks, can I kind of, when I reuse them, I just operate kind of graphically. I don't need to know the Python code or to make a new workflow, or is that correct?
No, you don't need to, but you have the possibility. And that's very important,
Exactly.
because
Yes,
you
right.
can see the logic. There is another question that Andrea asked, if the orchestration rule is configured by the operator, semi-automatic rule base, and that's a very good question, because you have different possibilities. The customer can do the customization if the customers want. In our case, we create the brick customized for the customers, and then the customer is capable to evolve, to change. So there is no vendor lock-in here, because this is a very open solution in terms of maybe the brick is a turnkey brick and it's already working and giving value, but you can double click it and you can see what is inside, and you can feel that you can change it if you want or if you need. Okay. For me, nobody wants to give you the key of your network, because it's your network. Okay, so
Yes.
you need to know what is happening inside of the solution. That's why we don't create a black box and don't say, okay, this is a magic algorithm that is designed for you. No. This is real open, so you can have the control. You don't need to be in the execution layer. You don't need to be a software developer, but you will remain with the control of what we are doing with your network, because again, it's your network.
Yeah, right.
I kind of wanted to add to that. And again, Andreas was asking if the rules are Python-based rules. And again, with Matt, we have the more high-level automation. So as we saw the workflow where you can drag and drop these different bricks, we have other solutions with the closed automation feature. Again, it is more of a user-friendly UI kind of feature where you just configure certain things and you have a closed loop working. And then you have the more low-level automations, which can be based on Python, they can be based on Ansible. So we have different open source technologies. We use GraphQL, we use PostgreSQL as a database. So we have these different open source technologies working within the platform, but with an added layer of this Math engine solution to have these more modularized features within the platform. So it's not that the orchestration is based on Python rules. It is more of using these open technologies. And as Herman said, the platform comes with, you have templates, you have pre-built integrations, you have all of these pre-built solutions so that you can plug in within your orchestrated automation. And you can be that engineer that opens that low-level automation and sees a code and customize it. Or you can use the predefined templates. You can use the bricks built by Iquall to build that orchestration layer. So that's kind of what I wanted to add here. We use these technologies, but you also have this orchestrated on top level solution. And you have templates and other things to help you with that curve and introducing value quickly.
That's perfect. So that's kind of for any type of profile, you can do it at your level, how you want to kind of do those new workflows and use cases. So maybe also when one question here, a really good one is, as we are talking, of course, modern things, LLMs, AI, etc. But okay, the operator lives in a quite challenging, complex environment where we have also legacy equipment, etc. So the question here is, how does Matt handle legacy equipment alongside modern 5G architectures?
Legacy networks never dies. Right, Moira? Never dies. They're always on at the end of the time. There's always a network element in some part of the network. So a real brown fail combines legacy architecture with modern architectures.
Right.
Yes,
We-
and yeah, sorry.
uh,
Okay, as a solution, Matt, I think we mentioned it, but it is vendor agnostic, it is protocol flexible. So we support the more modern architectures, let's say, so connect to open APIs, use netconf, use REST to connect to those devices. But we also support command line executions, SSH execution. We support SNMP integration. So we have that connectors towards the legacy network and the modern network. And what Matt provides, it's an abstraction layer, as Herman mentioned. So you can execute this orchestrated process, you can orchestrate across your network, working with the more modern devices and working also with the legacy network by abstracting that solution from the network, from the domain, and from the protocol that those devices on the network are using. So that's how Matt handles that legacy part alongside with the modern, more 5G or maybe now 6G architecture we're seeing.
Yeah, excellent. I really love it because I have a kind of small engineer living inside of me, and it would be really nice to play around. And there's many different options. Python, I like that one, and SNMP and so forth. So you have really a lot of tools to choose from. It's really great. Let's see. Here's a little bit of a future-looking question also. So there was already some demonstrations on these Gemini AIs, etc. And there's a question that will AI and LLM-based logic fully replace traditional rule-based workflows? What's your views of that, looking ahead a few years?
What do you think, Moira, about that?
We don't think that LLMs are going to replace the fully rule-based workflows because we know that some procedures on the telco are very deterministic. You don't want to play around with your network. You don't want to introduce any risk with that. And AI and LLM based logic is more adaptive. It depends on the context. It is not deterministic. You don't always get the same answer. So while of course we all want to the AI agents interacting with our network and doing things, we also like to have things controlled in a governed way. We have again the CI/CD methodologies, the DevOps methodologies incorporated with the platform, and we have these deterministic rule-based workflows that are known to the telco, that the CSPs have these procedures to remediate certain things or to how to act with certain situations. And we do not think that LLMs will replace that. They will add certain logic, sure, to that process. So what we were seeing, we can incorporate a Gemini, for example, within a deterministic workflow, but we don't think that in the short term, and maybe not in the long term either, they will replace fully this based logic. Again, we have legacy equipment, we have a legacy network, we have a lot of brownfield working in the CSPs. So thinking that an AI will solve all of our problems and will replace what the solutions that we already have working, we are not on that mindset.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yes,
Claus, if you have or Herman, yeah.
No, so sorry. I just was to add that LLMs are tools, and you need to use the tool in the right challenge. You need to create capabilities. There is not a tool for any challenge, and LLMs are bringing new capabilities, and you need to use it in the right place. If you are talking about the edge of your network and all the traffic from the beginning to the internet, so maybe you need LLMs to decide in that part of the process, because you have a simple rule, and it's more important about the resilience and the latency of the decision. So as Moira said, you need a lot of options, and you need to build with the different capabilities, the right stack of tools for that use case. What we provide is software platform that can you allow to orchestrate with CI/CD with different tools to decide what tool do you need, and not to force to the customer to use technology when nothing good from that, or nothing it's not the best solution for that problem, just because I want to say this is agent driven, and it depends on the use case.
Yeah, but I think that's the kind of beauty with math is that you actually don't need to know the answer to to that question, because you can do a fully automated LLM workflow, but you can also do fully rule-based and any mixture in between. So that's really nice. The flexibility allows for any sort of scenarios.
Even with Google, we don't use Gemini for everything. We have also integration, for example, with BigQuery. They have a lot of tools in the stack. So even when we talk with AWS, Azure, Google, they have different capabilities. So even them, they are not saying the LLM is for everything. I'm saying the example of Gemini because we have the integration native with our platform, but it's something that applies to any cloud provider. So even them, they're not saying use agent for everything.
Yeah, right. All right, so I think we are fairly close to the end, but still time if you have some questions. Let me ask still here that if you look in your experience and what do you think? Where are the biggest savings or benefits from the operators when you have seen that the operations that you have seen that they have automated? Is it some reduction of penalty payments or better reduction of engineering hours, better user the customer experience and so forth? Any category that stands out?
Yes, we don't see critical savings in reduction of headcount.
Right.
Sometimes in the discussion appears the headcount, but yes, it's something you need to put on the table and discuss it, because you don't want to have large operation teams just to maintain the network. Okay, but you still need the human. They're still in the center of all of that. What we see that the most important, impact are in the MTTR reduction, in the SLA compliance, in the productivity. Okay, you can do more things in less time with less effort. So they bring you new capability to things in new product, in SLAs with 9969s, for example. So there is a limit in the cost, because again, the zero knock, for example, where the idea is nobody be there in your knock and you can turn off the light, doesn't exist. You always need engineer, at least seeing that everything is okay, like the last guardian of your network. So it's not about headcount. It's about to create new capabilities and respond to the business more quickly. Okay, if you need to design a new product and you have a timeline of your Gantt of your project of 12 months, you probably will lose opportunities, or you need to include another company's integrators or another companies just to do the same thing quicker. So if you automate, you can bring new capabilities and respond to the business and say, okay, I can develop something new because I don't need to change everything in my network. It's Apify, it's governed with closed loop policy. So I'm more comfortable if I change something, I can do a very quick rollback to bring the uptime again. So we're seeing that headcount is not the main reason to do this. You can say 10-20% of your headcount without any doubt, but at the end of the day, you need the headcount, but you will probably change the role. You will move to another to another type of role or type of task, more creative, more in the innovation areas, more in the design areas, but you still need the engineer.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think we see that also with our customers. We try to automate the kind of analysis of the data that we provide, and it's not really about reducing headcount, but it's more that everybody is so understaffed and everybody is so busy doing manual things that you are just grateful when you can do much more interesting stuff than doing all of those manual operations, right? You can really use what you are good at and bring better benefit to the company.
If you study engineer, you study a lot of years. You want to create new things. You want to do interesting things. So
Yes.
when you are young, you need to be in the NOC or in areas where you need to do repetitive things because you need to learn, and somebody needs to do that because it's important. But where you're getting older and you are acquiring more experience, you want to do new things. So this is the way you can achieve that dream or that North Star. So I have a question for you, Claus. This is not prepared, but I thought in this 10 minutes ago. Some of our customers attempt to use open source TWAM solution, assuming they can save on the TCO, or maybe it's not only cheaper or quicker. I have my opinion, but I'm not the expert on TWAM. So what's your opinion about those who choose the open source path instead of core companies like yours?
Yeah, of course, that's a kind of a natural thought to go to the open source. But the fact is that when we look at where these solutions are deployed, it is very complex environments. You have tens of thousands of base stations, you have routers, you have so many devices, and on the other hand, you also have the requirement to monitor it actually fairly very accurately. Like I said, maybe 10 packets per second per 10,000 devices. That's a lot of data. So when you take the open source solution at the beginning, you get started very cheaply, but then you're going to see that, okay, now it's not working quite good enough and so forth. And then you actually start to spend much more money yourself trying to fix it, trying to work around, trying to improve it, instead of just taking a solution that has been already there on the market for many years. And maybe I can actually mention that as part of it. It's a really good question. And we have on our website, we have an interview with Miguel Morgado from Eutelsat OneWeb. As you can imagine, the satellite networks are really challenging environments. For instance, one handset or satellite receiver will see one satellite for maybe something like 2 minutes, and then it will hand over to the next satellite in a low Earth orbit scenario. So it's a very dynamic environment. You need to very accurately monitor and manage this. And they chose our solution. They talk a little bit about their experiences in this video. I suggest go to the Creanord website and check it out. But in short, they did have a TLAM solution. It was actually not open source, but it was more of a legacy TLAM solution, and they needed to modernize with something that could scale to their operations. And they chose us, and they were actually pretty happy, very happy with our solution. So that's maybe my shorter response to that one.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Maybe do you have any other questions you thought about, or let me see if we have any more from the floor. No, I don't think so. Let me conclude with just one as we AI is of course topic of every conversation. Maybe another one which relates to AI is energy efficiency. So maybe I just throw it out there now with your experience and the deployments you have seen. Have you seen any use cases that would relate to energy efficiency so far in these closed loop automations?
Yes, mostly of the use case we are seeing the run. Okay, is that sometimes the promise is very high, so the hype is excessive. We are talking about 10% or things like that. So it depends on a lot of if we're discussing about active equipment, passive equipment. So I'm not an expert in RAN, but I know the use case because we work in some of the POC. There is two parts of the problem, very similar like our blueprint. There is the algorithm, okay, where somebody provides the algorithm. Sometimes the discussion is about like a magic algorithm. And this is the other part, the hands part, the action part. So that's what we can provide in the solution. So if you want to turn down a radio station or some part of the network element, some part of the node B to save energy, you need to do it with governance. You need to don't affect the customers, have some automation to do the rollback. So again, you need to orchestrate the process, because when you shut down something in the telco, when you do a maintenance window, when you do anything in your network, you need to create a ticket to announce that you're going to change something, who approved the network, the task, when you're going to do it, with the MOP to do a rollback. You need to orchestrate a lot of process, and so the algorithm part is one part of the problem. Iquall is not there. Okay, I'm saying we can do that, but we are not expert in that part of the algorithm in terms of energy saving. But what we really do is the other part, to orchestrate that process. So that kind of solution right now, what we are seeing that they're being promoted by the vendor itself. So it's not Huawei, Nokia, Ericsson. Again, it's a very attractive use case. It's very in the past, the excessive hype, I think that confused the conversation, because they set up the objective very high. So for us, if you have already the stack of solution, a Mac suite, we can give you again capabilities to do all the orchestration of that use case, of other use case, without any worries or any kind of you don't need to create a project from the scratch to change something in your network. Why? Because you're already creating capabilities in Matrix to do a lot of things, to do closed loop, to do an activation of new services, to change parameters. And then if you want to insert this use case of energy saving, it's like extend a couple of bricks to do something more than. So maybe my answer is very long, but I think that the hype is too low for that use cases, and it's important, because in terms of what is happening with climate change, everybody need to think in that and do things about that. But I want to separate the hype for the saving itself, and what do you actually need to do that in the real live production network. That's where we can help to the customers to create that capabilities.
Yeah. So you are fully ready for it. Yeah. And the vendor independence again is the key here, that you can integrate with anybody offering that capability. All right. Thank you. I think we are close to the end of the webinar. So thank you, Herman. Thank you, Moira. Very interesting topic. And let me conclude here just that if you just want to have some further questions, or you want to see a demo, again, we are at the Mobile World Congress, so come visit the Creanord and Iquall stands. We can do a demo there, or we can do a demo at any other time, of course, via conferencing. And if you have some other queries also, we can answer them via email. You see our email addresses here, sales@creanord.com or hello@iquall.net. And we'd be very happy to help you out and show and take you towards the autonomous network, brick by brick, I guess.
Claus. See you on mobile.
Yes,
Thank
see you
you.
at the
Thank you.
Mobile World Congress. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.